Uber Eats horror story. The last delivery. Jake was a college student working late nights as an Uber Eats driver to make ends meet. One Friday night, just as he was about to finish his shift, he received an order from a restaurant he had never seen before, the Hollow Diner. The payout was unbelievably high, nearly $200 for a single delivery. The catch? The restaurant was located deep in the woods, far from any populated area. He hesitated but ultimately accepted the order. As he drove, the roads became darker, surrounded by dense trees. There were no streetlights, no houses, just miles of empty road. His GPS led him to an old diner with a flickering neon sign, barely holding on to life. It looked abandoned, but the door was slightly ajar, and dim light seeped through the cracks. Inside, the air was stale, carrying the faint scent of rotting meat. A man stood behind the counter, wearing a grease-stained apron. His face was pale, his eyes hollow and sunken. He didn't speak, just slid a single paper bag across the counter. Jake noticed that the receipt was handwritten, not printed like usual. No restaurant branding, just a name. For Mr. Gray. Unnerved but determined to complete the delivery, Jake took the bag and hurried back to his car. As he drove, a strange feeling settled in his chest. The further he got from the diner, the heavier the bag seemed. At one point, he swore it moved slightly. The delivery address was even more unsettling, a location with no house number, just a pin dropped in the middle of nowhere. His GPS led him to an old, decrepit house, its windows covered in grime. There were no lights, no signs of life, but the instructions were clear. Leave the food at the doorstep. Do not knock. Do not wait. As he placed the bag down, a whisper brushed against his ear, though he was completely alone. Thank you for bringing me home. His breath hitched, and he turned, scanning the empty surroundings. No one was there. He sprinted back to his car, his hands trembling as he started the engine. But before he could drive off, he glanced at the rearview mirror. Someone was sitting in his back seat. A shadowy figure with sunken eyes and a grotesque grin. The last thing Jake heard was the sound of the delivery notification. Order completed. Then, the screen of his phone went black. Second story. The wrong delivery. I used to drive for Uber Eats to make some extra money. Most nights were routine: pick up food, drop it off, and move on. But one night, I got an order that still haunts me to this day. It was almost midnight, and I was about to log off when I got a new order. The restaurant was a small diner called Maggie's Kitchen, and the order was pretty simple: steak, mashed potatoes, and green beans. Nothing strange about the food, but the delivery instructions were weird. Leave the food at the door. Do not knock. Do not leave until you see me take it inside. I had never seen instructions like that before, but I didn't think much of it. The delivery address was far, almost 30 minutes outside of town. By the time I got there, it was completely dark, and the area felt isolated. The house itself looked abandoned. The paint was peeling, the porch was covered in dead leaves, and the light on the porch flickered like it was struggling to stay on. I double-checked my GPS. Yeah, this was the place. I stepped out of my car, placed the food on the porch, and backed away. Then, I waited. A minute passed. Nothing. Then suddenly, bang! Something hit the door from the inside. I nearly jumped. My heart started pounding. Before I could react, the door slowly creaked open just an inch. Then, a hand shot out. It was thin, pale, and bony, with long fingers that looked way too unnatural. It grabbed the bag, pulled it inside, and the door slammed shut. I stood there frozen. What the hell did I just see? Then, my phone buzzed. A new notification. Customer has added a $50 tip. Thanks for delivering. I didn't waste another second. I got in my car and sped away. A week later, at almost the exact same time, I got the same order. Same food. Same address. Same instructions. Something in my gut told me to decline it, but curiosity got the better of me. So, I accepted. When I pulled up to the house again, I noticed something that made my stomach drop. The bag from my last delivery was still sitting on the porch, untouched. The food had rotted, the bag sagging from grease stains. If no one had eaten it, then who took it inside last time? I placed the new bag down, but this time, I didn't back away. I waited, And then, bang! Another hard slam against the door. My hands started shaking. The door slowly creaked open just an inch, but this time, no hand came out. Instead, the old bag from last week slowly slid out of the darkness like someone was giving it back. I felt sick. Then, my phone buzzed. A new text message. Thank you for returning my meal. Please come inside. I didn't think. I ran back to my car and sped away. The next day, I couldn't stop thinking about it. So, I drove to Maggie's kitchen and asked the cashier if she knew anything about that address. Her face went pale. That house? No one's lived there for years. I told her about my deliveries, about the hand, the food. She just shook her head. Then, the cook, an older guy, stepped in. His expression was serious. That house belonged to Mr. Holloway. He used to order the same meal every night. My stomach tightened. What happened to him? I asked. The cook hesitated. Then, in a low voice, he said, he died 30 years ago, alone. I felt my blood turn cold. But someone took the food. The cook just stared at me. Are you sure about that? That night, I got one final Uber Eats request. Same food, same instructions. But this time, the name on the receipt wasn't Mr. Holloway. It was my name. I never went back, and I never drove for Uber Eats again.